Today, what we're going to talk about is this idea of certification. And the particular question, which is like, what certifications do I need to be able to teach online? What certifications do I need, or what qualifications do I need before, either I'll feel confident enough, students will take me seriously, schools will hire me. Like, there's a whole big range of questions that people have about this.
Welcome, good afternoon. I'm here today. It may not be the afternoon where you are. So in fact, we'll just say good day. I'm here today with Alex Asher, CEO of LearnCube. We're looking, as we often do, at online teaching, the business, the bits, all of those things. My name's Thom Jones. I look a lot like Father Christmas, but I'm not Father Christmas. I work with schools on their business models and their academic structures and all of the bits in between. And Alex and I often have these chats and throw ideas about and see what happens. Join us.
And Thom, since you have so much experience in this amazing industry, I would love to, why don't we just understand the basics? So if somebody is properly doesn't know anything about qualifications in language teaching, can you kind of guide us through maybe at least some of the main certifications, qualifications?
Okay.
And go from there.
It breaks down like this. So in the UK and most of Western Europe, you're either going to do a Cambridge University accredited Celta,
okay,
right? Which is what people use as their first initial thing. That normally takes 1 month, right? You can also do the Trinity College London recognised cert TESOL, right? Similarly, 1 month, okay? Or you can do it spaced out part-time every year. But that's your basic qualification in most of Europe. That's recognised worldwide. In North America, people tend to do masters after a related degree. In the UK, you often don't have to, and Australia and New Zealand, you often don't have to do a related degree, and then you do this Cambridge Cert TESOL or the London, Trinity College London qualifications, which both of those equivalent, both of those are very kind of basic qualification. After that, after a couple of years of working, bit of experience, bit of ideas under your belt, some people go on to either the Cambridge Delta or the Trinity College London DIP TESOL. And that's kind of the master's equivalent. That is normally for people who are going into management or academic management, director of studies, that kind of thing. And those will qualify you to work pretty much anywhere in the world. So with a 1 month TESOL or Celta, you're qualified to work pretty much anywhere in the world. You cannot work as an English teacher in most countries within Europe without one of those. So to have legal standing as a language teacher, you can work without those kind of qualifications in, for example, PRC China and other parts of Southeast Asia and some parts of South America. People are very happy to have a native speaker, and that is taken as a qualification, which is ridiculous on some levels. But that is often seen as enough of a qualification.
Got it. And actually, let's jump on that one, because that is something that I know a lot of people kind of use and misuse, right? Which is, I'm a native speaker, so I'm entitled to teach. I'm a native speaker, like that doesn't entitle me to teach. You can look at it both ways. But I think really the pendulum is swinging towards like that, just because you're a native speaker doesn't make you a good teacher, nor does it make you kind of qualified to teach. And I think those two things are different. However, there's of course some natural advantages that you have by being a native speaker. So do you want to talk through those so that people can, again?
I think what's really interesting with the native speaker model is, I always say, can you swim? Were you taught to swim by a fish? Fish are very good at swimming. They're not very good at teaching. And as you say, being a native speaker is not an indication that you're a good teacher. What makes you a good teacher is being a good teacher and knowing your subject. And often as a native speaker, for example, myself, when I started teaching, I knew how to speak my version of English from my geographical region. But I couldn't tell you why. And I had to then work with non-native teachers to learn the structure of my language. So I had to find out the kind of bits of the language, the adverbs, all of these complex terms that I had no understanding of at all. And I learnt those from people who had, mysteriously, learnt the language successfully.
Yeah, I remember doing it in German as well. Like, I remember learning German at school and going, wow, okay, so is this, what's an adverb? What's this? Because no one bothered teaching me it. They just were like, hey, I want you to write these, these stories and these novels and these, these structured essays, all of this stuff. But I never really remember knowing what a verb was or that kind of thing. It was only when I was learning a foreign language that I was even exposed to these ideas. And I think in some ways, not having any background in either learning a foreign language or having studied how to teach a foreign language, I think is, again, you can really help from a conversation point of view, but you may not be nearly as helpful in actually teaching somebody how to learn a particular language and why things are the way they are.
Yeah, and the reality is that the people learning English now are not going to be using that in their daily lives with people from Oxford or Boston. They're going to be using it with people from Sao Paulo, from Delhi, from Harbin, and from Vladivostok, and fair play. So having an accent that sounds like a native speaker is of no value. It culturally is interesting, but has no value at all. And I think being able to communicate and being able to be understood is the key. And that comes from somebody who is a good teacher. And what makes people a good teacher, partly is qualification, partly is experience, and partly is being a good teacher.
Yeah, let's go on to that though, before you jump over that, because I think you've brought it up a few times. This is not going to be an exclusive or infinite kind of list, but what are some of the descriptions that you would have to kind of explain what good teaching looks like? Now, this is not pedagogically what looks good, but just give me some idea of some values and some ideals for us to be good teachers.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because when you ask people what makes a good teacher, people always go, oh, they've got to be fun and they've got to be somebody who can engage people. Yeah. And then you say to them, who were your best teachers at school? And often the people that they learned things from, didn't have a lovely time with, but learned things from, were not fun.
Yeah.
And it's a real tricky balance, isn't it? Because obviously everybody likes a laugh, and that's great, and it's a nice way to learn. But you have to actually learn the stuff. So if you come out of the classroom and you're laughing, you've had a lovely time, that's wonderful. Particularly if you went to a cafe. But if you've got to learn how to do a thing and you don't know how to do that thing, having had a lovely time is only that you've had a lovely time. So
yeah. So
also,
you're
like one person, sorry, go on. Yeah.
No, I think you kind of nailed it a little bit there, which is like, either way, the outcome is you have to be effective. Like, being a good teacher, like being a good person is different, right? Being a good teacher is I'm effective at helping somebody learn. Not necessarily that I am good at conveying knowledge, but I can help somebody learn really, really effectively. And then the ideal is that you can make somebody enjoy that experience. That doesn't mean necessarily laughing, but it means that they're not hating it, which often can then reduce their ability to learn as well. So having that balance seems to be kind of what a good teacher is.
And it's also, it's very much kind of, each learner is as different as each teacher. So some learners really want a kind of kinesthetic teacher who's moving about, doing stuff. Yeah. Some teachers want somebody who's writing stuff down because they're visual learners, and some people are auditory. And so, so a bit of all of those things is probably important, I think. Yeah. And also some people will get a lot from a certain kind of teaching and some people won't.
Yeah.
So one person's brilliant teacher is somebody else's rubbish teacher. And I personally am very capable of being a rubbish teacher and being a great teacher, depending on who I'm teaching, what mood I'm in, what mood they're in.
Yeah, and it seems like adaptability seems to be a very important one. Like, if you can't always choose your students, maybe some schools will get better and better at matching certain teachers with certain types of students. And again, it's not necessarily whether they're, you're only going to do one format, which is writing things on the board, but you might, you're going to be figuring out what works best for that student to understand the material or understand what it is that they want to achieve and get the most out of that. But adaptability seems to be a crucial kind of attribute of a good teacher.
Yeah, I think that's always key, because you have to kind of think, is this person going to learn by doing this or by doing this? And should I structure the class and the course like this or like this? Yeah. And we were talking before actually about the value now that a lot of people are taking from a kind of a course and a kind of a class that isn't a class and doesn't have a teacher,
Sure.
where you're just doing language production with somebody who's not a teacher,
Yeah.
and you're having a chat, and that's really, you learn a lot from that, don't you?
Yeah.
Just in the
And that's a
sense of,
good way to start, right? Like if you're at the start of your journey and before you kind of get bogged down with other teachers saying that you're not a teacher, and that may be true, like you maybe haven't got enough experience or you don't have the qualifications, but there are probably opportunities for you to start at least building up your experience in, let's not call it teaching, but building up your experience in conversation classes, and maybe piece by piece understanding how and why people want to learn certain things. And then maybe from the questions you get in those conversation classes, like doing your best to explain, and then maybe using that as the motivation to become more professional, more qualified, and have better experience. And why don't you tell me that a little bit more, Thom, in terms of, in the end, a teacher should still be a professional. So how do teachers that have done a lot of experience, how do they feel good about what they need to do next? And maybe particularly thinking about the online teacher. And then also, how do new teachers also feel like they can start getting their feet wet and actually go on a trajectory to become a great teacher?
I think it's a really great question, and I think it's a tough question, because obviously, the journey of teaching is a kind of ongoing journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I always feel when teachers don't want to learn anymore, then, and for myself, I'm always, when I go around the world, I train teachers,
Yeah.
but I'm always listening and I'm always taking stuff on, and I'm always very happy to kind of give the mic to anybody who's saying a good thing, because I don't think that my view on things or my perspective on things is necessarily better or best. So I'm very happy to pass that across. And if it's somebody who qualified 37 years ago and they've got loads of qualifications, great. And if it's somebody who qualified yesterday, great. Because both, if you do it for a long time, you can get jaded. If you've just started, you can still be enthusiastic and brave enough to try new things, because you don't know it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then it does work. And I think, one of the things about qualification, and as you say, I think teachers being professional and wanting to be more professional is the same as any profession, a real goal. But, now with teaching online in the last 6 months, certainly, but before that even, a lot of people don't have any qualifications in teaching online. And so the qualifications they do have are maybe of no use teaching online. And maybe 30 years in the classroom, 10 years in the classroom, 3 months in the classroom doesn't prepare you for teaching online. And it's a very different skill.
So Thom, if we were to kind of summarize that, what would be like 3 key attributes that you would see in a great teacher?
I think teachers have to be adaptable.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to happen. You never know who's going to come through that door, virtual or wooden. And I think teachers have to be willing to learn all the time.
Okay.
You've always got to be willing to learn new things, and you've always got to want to learn new things. That thirst for knowledge, I think, is really important. And I think you've got to learn to build trust, because a lot of teachers confuse building trust with making people like them. And that's a normal social thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yet, I always feel with teaching, it's great if you get on with your students, but you're not there to make friends. They're not there to make friends. I don't mean that you have to be hard and horrible, but that's not the main thing. The main thing is that they learn the thing you're teaching. Yeah. So building trust is really key.
Makes sense. So tell me then, if we kind of
also patience, right? And an ability to not go when people are frustrated.
Yeah, I think patience and tolerance seem to be quite key virtues for teachers, at least in longevity points of view. That makes sense to me. Not willing to throw your student, even virtually, out the window. It seems important. Key attribute. Good part of the interview process.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell me then, we're in this new, I don't consider it a new world at all, where a lot of teachers have had to transition online. And it's funny because some of them believe that all of their experience is completely 100% relevant and transferable online. Some of them bits of it, and then some of them not at all. And there's probably a happy medium there. But tell me a little bit about where you see, particularly a physical teacher with experience going online, how qualified they should feel, and then maybe vice versa, like somebody that's just done like a weekend course online, is that qualified enough? What's enough?
I mean, I think, as I said before, that sort of second point, you've always got to be willing to learn more. You've always got
Mm.
to want to learn more. Any qualification is a lot better than none. And asking any advice is significantly better than not asking advice, isn't it? But you've never got enough advice, and you're never perfect. I never go into a class and think this always works. This will be great. Zoom, and don't then fall badly on my ass, because that happens a lot. And that's what I like about teaching. I like the fact that I can fall flat on my face, and it can also sometimes go beautifully. And there's kind of reasons why that works. And some of that's qualification, and some of that's experience, and some of that's just, the phase of the moon, people in the room, And I think what's lovely with teaching, is that kind of mercurial, it could go either way. And so qualification is great. You have to want to be there.
Yeah,
You
it's an
want to.
indicator at least, right? Like, if nothing else, qualification is a massive indicator. I think it's still incredibly valuable, but again, it seems like it's one pillar of that teacher spectrum, not something that could be entirely kind of rested against.
Definitely.
And then vice versa, just pure experience with no willingness to kind of learn the fundamentals of how to teach, also, in my view, sort of feels a little bit lacking.
Definitely. And I, from myself, like I first taught on a kind of exchange program,
Yeah.
and was just thrown in a classroom, and I thought I was fantastic, and then I did a Celta qualification and realized how terrible I was. And it made me work much, much harder to kind of get better.
Yeah.
And I think I've always kept the momentum up, and I think that's true for any teacher, that, qualification is key. And I suppose as much as you can get is always brilliant. But you have to want to be in the classroom, because if you don't want to be in the classroom, you're not going to enjoy it. They're not going to enjoy it. Nobody's going to learn anything at all.
Yeah, and that goes for online as well. If you don't want to be in the online classroom,
Absolutely,
just don't be there. Like, that's just you're wasting everyone's time, and it's not fair to the students either. Like, if I was a student that could only learn online with you, Tom, like, even if you're a brilliant teacher in person, that is completely irrelevant to me. I need you to be great as an online teacher for me. And that means you need to show all of the same attributes, plus at least have a level of understanding, if not a desire, to improve your skill set as an online teacher, including eventually more technology and tools that will help you teach me as a student better. So I think that's a really important kind of.
Well, we've seen a lot of teachers in the teacher training stuff that I've done over this particular kind of lockdown and past, who have, who are physical classroom teachers who've been thrust online and have resisted it fiercely because it's scary and it's new.
Sure.
And there is a level, and you've said this before, a level at which, it's all right to say, oh, this is all new and it's a shock, but then you have to work hard to get better at it. You can't just say, oh, I'm not an online teacher, I don't know.
Yeah.
You have to, and I think that's that's true for any level of teaching, isn't it? That you've always got to want to learn new things, get better at it, and pass that enthusiasm on. Because if we don't think we can learn, and that that's the native speaker thing, isn't it? The native speaker model is the kind of pinnacle of language skill, bases a whole educational structure on not being able to learn. Because if I'm saying, look, this person has learnt a language fluently, works and teaches a language fluently, and this person just speaks it, does my student want to be somebody who just speaks it or somebody who's actually learnt it? Because what I want to do is show that progression, and that's where I want students to go. So,
I think that's a great way to finish. Please join us particularly on YouTube. Check out the LearnCube YouTube channel. Tom and I have a lot of these discussions. We really enjoy them and would love not only to help you, but also, if you'd like to support us, subscribe to the channel, add some productive and constructive comments, and so that we can kind of improve things and maybe get your feedback and kind of, again, we want to learn just as much as you here as listeners want to learn. So thanks again for being there, and we'll see you on our YouTube channel in the future. Thanks again.
Pleasure and a joy. Thanks so much, ladies and gents.
Great.
Pleasure.